JC. I am here to do another video and it's going to be vinyl finds. First off, a little update for the last week. Since last Friday, I have been extremely sick. I will actually go on record and say it is probably the sickest I have been. I can't remember ever being this sick. It's worse than any illness I've ever had in my life. I had the flu and it just would not get better. I spent days in bed. Still not 100%, but I'm certainly 100% better, from being bedridden. But I am feeling better, so I figured I would join you and do a video of vinyl finds. Here are some albums that I have found over the last couple weeks, but I just haven't shown on my channel. And I want to start with one of the most epic flea market finds of my entire life. So, a few weeks ago, before I got sick, me and my son, we went up to a local flea market, which has an indoor and outdoor section. And normally, the outdoor section, you're more likely to find something cool because the vendors change every week. You know, you can rent it for one weekend, where the indoor vendors tend to permanently be there, and they tend to have a better idea of what they have. We looked at the outside. I didn't really see anything. Go inside. We're going down the aisles. And I go and I see this guy. He's got 3 records. That's it. And they're in the back wall behind his little desk. And I see one of my all-time grails. I have a reissue of this, but I've never owned a first pressing. And that is Chris Isaak Heart-Shaped World. Just an absolutely mint shape. So I am thinking to myself, okay, it's about a $60 record. This is mint. I've never seen it. It's one of my favorite records. If it's under 100, I'm going to buy it. I say to the gentleman, how much for the Chris Isaak record? And he says, $5. I was like, oh, snap. Yes, please. Thank you. $5 for one of my all-time grails. Super, super excited about that. Beautiful condition, sounds amazing. I do have my brand new Fluence turntable, which sounds incredible too. I've only got to spin a few records because I've been sick. I certainly spun the Rhino bucket that my buddy Aaron gave me. So thanks again, Aaron, for that. Just absolutely incredible. And this morning, spinning some Deep Purple Perfect Strangers. All right, so one item I'd like to talk about is I've got a couple reissues of this label I've never purchased before, and that is PS America. I believe that's how you pronounce it, PIAS America. And I picked up the Slaughter Stick It To Ya and the Great White Hooked. Now, I know what you're saying. You're saying, Josh, don't you own both those albums? I know you own both those albums. I absolutely do. I have a first press censored cover of Great White Hooked, and I have the Friday Music reissue of Slaughter Stick It To You. Now, most of the Slaughter reissues are done by Kiss My Wax, which is an independent label. Friday Music considers themselves an audiophile, and for the most part sound incredible, and they use gatefolds. The downside to Friday Music is the cover art really suffers. If you take a look at this, look how dull. You can barely see the carnival in the background. And then look at this. I know I got some glare there, but holy shit. I mean, that is a giant difference. I'm happy to say that this label, PS America, sounds awesome. I did spin the Slaughter. I haven't spun the Great White yet, but excited now to have both variations of the cover. I will spin the Great White, let you know how the sound quality sounds compared to an original. And once I do that, I will make a video. Okay, so here's some pickups I got at Purchase Street Records. Now, some feedback I got from viewers is please talk about unofficial releases because I certainly have a decent amount in my collection. Some of the feedback I got was, why do you buy them? Another person said, do you feel guilty about buying them? Absolutely. I mean, as you can see, have thousands of pieces of physical media, and I want to support the artist. And I try to do that as much as I possibly can by going to concerts and buying albums, CDs, and cassettes. And I've been doing that my whole life. I kind of look at unofficial presses as placeholders. Like, here's an unofficial press of the leather mix of not Van Halen, Motley Crue, Too Fast for Love, their first album. You can see that I have many presses of this album. This is a Canadian press. And, you know, one day I would obviously love to have a first pressing U.S. leather mix of this album, but I also don't really feel like spending thousands of dollars on one record. I like to play my records, and if a record is worth thousands of dollars, I might make me a little nervous to play it, and I don't want to feel that way. I want to listen to it and enjoy it for what it's worth. Some people say, well, the Unofficials, if they release it or re-release it, don't you consider that at that point it to be worthless? Well, to me, honestly, I don't really look at records as an investment. I know a lot of you do, and that's awesome. I sold my collection once before, and I absolutely regretted it. And I said I would never do that again. So at this point, I really have to say, if I'm never going to sell it again, that it's not worth anything. Now, hopefully, my son collects records. One day I'll pass this on to him. And if he decides to sell it, that's a different story. This here sounds good. I will tell you that the Canadian press sounds better. And the Canadian press is pretty reasonably priced compared to a first press American. So that's when I got Unofficial Motley Crue. Here is kind of your traditional bootleg. Ozzy Osbourne, Randy Rhoads. This is a soundboard recording from Bloomington, Indiana. You know, it sounds pretty good. You could definitely tell it's soundboard, but you could also tell it's early 80s. Definitely got a tinny sound to it. But that being said, I love Randy Rhoads. He is just one of my favorite guitarists. Not my favorite, because Eddie Van Halen will always hold that championship. But it's still pretty cool. A nice timepiece to have to complement like tribute, you know, which is more of my go-to Randy Rhoads live album. Next, this is an official press of Saxon Strong Arm of the Law. Slowly but surely collecting all the Saxon albums. This is their first album, if I'm not mistaken. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong. So just great traditional heavy metal and a fantastic cover. I absolutely love that cover. Another one I got to purchase through Records, The Dogs D'Amour. This is their second album, I believe. They did have an EP in between the first album and this one. This one is called King of Thieves, but I know that it does have a different title in Europe. You'll have to remind me what that is. I think it's Errol Flynn or something like that. It's an old actor's name. So yeah, Dogs D'Amour, kind of like sleazy Rolling Stones type of music. Pretty good, and it's got like one of the world's smallest hype stickers there. Next one is an Unofficial press, and it is one of my grails. I have it on CD. I have it on cassette. I've always wanted a vinyl copy, and that is The Last Action Hero. This movie actually bombed. It's a comedy, and most people just didn't get the humor in the movie. But the soundtrack was a huge success. Had Alice in Chains, Anthrax, Def Leppard, Queensryche, Tesla. I mean, it's like a who's who of my favorite bands. If Van Halen was on this fucker, it would be the greatest album of all time. That's a joke. I know. It's not the greatest album of all time. Someone's going to write down below. But still, very, very cool. Excuse me, guys. And excited to have it in my collection. And then lastly, Real Gun Music has done it again. I mean, I love Real Gun Music. They press a lot of obscure shit, but they also press a lot of horror stuff. And one of my favorite actors of all time is Vincent Price. Man, I love his movies like The Mask of Red Death, House of Wax. Me and my buddy Gary from Physical Format Rock and Roll, we always talk about the Hammer horror, the Universal horror, the Vincent Price. That's like, it's my passion. I absolutely love it. In terms of movies, I gravitate towards the older horror movies. And Vincent Price is one of my favorites. And this is just spooky stories told by Vincent Price about witchcraft. It comes with a book about witchcraft, which don't worry, guys, I won't be doing any witchcraft in my basement here. But still very, very cool. It reminds me of being a kid and having all those Halloween albums that my dad would play. So very, very cool. So those are albums that I've picked up recently. If you've picked up anything cool, put it down below, and I'll join you soon with another video, guys.